Alright, so this is going to be another movie review. This one's called The Sound of Music, 1965. Hate this flick. Giving it 1 out of 5 stars. The movie poster is disgusting. My grandmother warned me about this movie. She said the music stank, and she was right. I had to sit through this at the St. Dominic's movie night. The happiest sound in all the world. How about the lamest sound in all the world? The Sound of Music is a 1965 U.S. musical drama film produced and directed by Robert Wise. From a screenplay written by Ernest Lehman and starring Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer, with Richard Hayden, Peggy Wood, Jamin Carr, and Eleanor Parker. The film is an adaptation of the 1959 stage musical composed by Richard Rodgers, with lyrics by Oscar Hammerstein II, and a book by Lindsay and Cross. It is based on the 1949 memoir, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers, by Maria von Trapp, and it is set in Salzburg, Austria. It is a fictional retelling of her experiences as governess to 7 children, her eventual marriage with their father, Captain George von Trapp, and their escape during the Auschwitz in 1938. Now, the escape part was interesting, I have to admit. It stopped being a musical and started being like a Nazi exploitation flick, I guess. I don't know. But by that point, I was at the hour 45 mark, and I didn't care anymore. That's how disgusted I was with this. Not only that, but the nun blasphemes God when she compares Julie Andrews' love for Christopher Plummer to love for God, but that's a different word in Koine Greek. It's called agape, unconditional love. In other words, you love God and you don't expect anything in return. Marital love involves reciprocal sort of back and forth. I love her, he loves me kind of thing. That's not the same. I don't know why the nun compares agape to earthly love. It made no sense to me. The music sucked. Julie Andrews got in her 90, and that's about it. I think this movie is rated G. This may have been the last movie that Ron Paul saw on the big screen. And my former coworker, it's her favorite movie of all time. Lucy Sam. I told her my favorite movie was Seconds. We like psychological terror on this channel, not some stupid lamestream musical from 1965. No. Filming took place from March to September 1964 in Los Angeles and Salzburg. The Sound of Music was released in the U.S. on March 2nd, 1965, initially as a limited roadshow theatrical release. That's why it has an intermission. It's a roadshow, same as Gone with the Wind. Initial critical response to the film was mixed, but it was a major commercial success, of course. Lamestream becoming the #1 box office film after 4 weeks and the highest grossing film of 1965. By November 1966, The Sound of Music had become the highest grossing film of all time, surpassing Gone with the Wind. And it held that distinction for 5 years. The film was popular throughout the world, breaking previous box office records in 29 countries. It had an initial theatrical release that lasted 4.5 years and 2 successful re-releases. It sold 283 million admissions worldwide, and it earned a total worldwide gross of $286 million on an $8 million budget. Production companies Argyle Enterprises, Inc., distributed by 20th Century Fox, release date March 2nd, 1965 in the United States. Running time, 174 minutes, way too long. Country, United States language, English. Budget, $8.2 million. Box office, $286.2 million. Sound of Music received 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. The film also received Golden Globe Awards for Best Motion Picture and Best Actress, the Directors Guild of America Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement, and the Writers Guild of America Award for Best Written U.S. American Musical. Since its original release, the film is widely regarded as one of the greatest films of all time. In 1998, the American Film Institute, AFI, listed The Sound of Music as the 55th greatest U.S. film of all time and the 4th greatest film musical. In 2001, the United States Library of Congress selected the film for preservation in the National Film Registry, finally finding it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Nobody's in the chat room. Let's go. We're on full tilt tonight. In 1938 in Salzburg, at the end of federal state of Austria regime, Maria is a free-spirited young Austrian woman studying to become a nun at Nonnberg Abbey. However, her youthful enthusiasm and lack of discipline causes concerned Mother Abbess sends Maria to the villa of retired naval captain George von Trapp to be the new governess to his 7 children, Liesel, Frederick, Louisa, Kurt, Brigitta, Marta, and Gretel. The captain has been raising his children using strict military discipline following the death of his wife. They have scared away several governesses by playing tricks, like putting spiders and snakes and frogs into their pocket. Although the children misbehave at first, Maria responds with kindness and patience, and soon the children come to trust and respect her. No more military styles raising kids. While the captain is away in Vienna, Maria makes play clothes for the children out of drapes that are to be changed. She takes them around Salzburg and the mountains while teaching them how to sing. When the captain returns to the villa with Baroness Elsa Schrader, a wealthy socialite, and their mutual friend Max Detweiler, they are greeted by Maria and the children returning from a boat ride on the lake, which ends abruptly when their boat overturns. Displeased by his children's clothes and activities, and Maria's impassioned appeal that he get closer to his children, the captain attempts to fire Maria. However, he hears singing from inside the house, and he is astonished to see his children singing for the Baroness. Filled with emotion, the captain joins the children, singing for the first time in years. The captain apologizes to Maria. The captain asks her to stay. Impressed by the children singing, Max proposes that he enter them in the upcoming Salzburg festival, but the captain disapproves of letting his children sing in public. During a grand party at the villa, where guests in formal attire waltz in the ballroom, Maria and the children look on from the garden terrace. When the captain notices Maria teaching her the traditional Landler folk dance, he steps in and he partners Maria in a graceful performance, culminating in a close embrace. Confused about her feelings, Maria blushes and she breaks away. Later, the Baroness, who noticed the captain's attraction to Maria, hides her jealousy by indirectly convincing Maria that she must return to the abbey. Mother Abbess learns that Maria has stayed in seclusion to avoid her growing romantic feelings for the captain, so she encourages her to return to the villa to look for her purpose in life. Why would she do that? There is only one purpose in life: to know, love, and to serve God. Not to become a stepmother. When Maria returns to the villa, she learns about the captain's engagement to the Baroness, and she agrees to stay until they find a replacement governess. I guess she compromised. She compromised her principles. Big surprise there. However, the Baroness learns that the captain's feelings for Maria have not changed, so she peacefully calls off the engagement in a rather phony scene. I mean, what took them so long? Why did they wait this long? And she returns to Vienna while encouraging the captain to express his feelings for Maria, who marries him. Wow. Shocking turnaround. While the While the couple is on their honeymoon, Max enters the children into the Salzburg festival against their father's wishes. Having learned that Austria has been annexed by the Third Reich, the couple return to their home, where the captain receives a telegram ordering report to German naval base of Bremerhaven to accept a commission into the Kriegsmarine. Heil Hitler! Strongly opposed to the Nazis and their ideology, the captain tells his family they must leave Austria immediately. Oh, he's the Black Rose of Austria. That night, the Von Trapp family attempt to flee to Switzerland. So they're going to hike the Swiss Alps, but they are stopped by a group of brown shirts led by the Gauleiter Hans Zeller, waiting outside the villa. So Hans Zeller was a big-time Hitler admirer. He was saying, Heil Hitler, before Hitler even took Austria. To cover his family's tracks, the captain maintains they are headed to the Salzburg festival to perform. Zeller insists on escorting them to the festival, after which his men will accompany the captain to Bremerhaven. Good luck with that. Later that night at the festival, during their final number, the Von Trapp family slips away. Surprise! And they seek shelter at the Abbey, where Mother Abbess hides them in the cemetery crypt. Zeller and his men soon arrive and they search the Abbey, but the family is able to escape using the caretaker's car. After almost getting caught by the 16-year-old girl's Nazi boyfriend, when Zeller's men attempt to pursue, they discover the cars will not start as two of the nuns have sabotaged their engines. The real Maria von Trapp had a brief, uncredited cameo appearance as a passerby alongside her daughter, Rosemarie, and the daughter of Werner von Trapp during I Have Confidence. That's another weird song, I Have Confidence? If you're Catholic, are you supposed to... Really? Are you supposed to be humble, or are you in love with yourself? Like Julie Andrews. This is supposed to be a Catholic movie, and it comes off as anti-Catholic as can be. I think Donald J. Sanborn talked about this. He's the only one who's able to spot this. Okay. The Sound of Music story is based on Maria von Trapp's memoir, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers, published in 1949 to help promote her family singing group following the death of her husband, George, in 1947. And there we have pictures of composer Richard Rodgers and lyricist Oscar Hammerstein II, two very untalented musicians. Hollywood producers expressed interest in publishing the title only, but Maria refused, wanting her entire story to be told. In 1956, German producer Wolfgang Lieberner purchased the film rights for $9,000, equivalent to $104,000 in 2024. Lieberner hired George Herdelek and Herbert Reinecker to write the screenplay, and Frank Goeth to supervise the soundtrack, which consisted of traditional Austrian folk songs. All of them are bad. The Trapp Family was released in West Germany on October 9th, 1956, and they became a major success. 2 years later, Lieberner directed a sequel, The Trapp Family in America, and the two pictures became the most successful films in West Germany during the post-war years. Their popularity extended throughout Europe and South America, South America and Europe. In 1956, Paramount Pictures purchased the U.S. film rights, intending to produce an English language version with Audrey Hepburn as Maria. The studio eventually dropped its option, but one of its directors, Vincent J. Donahue, proposed the story as a stage musical for Mary Martin. Producers Richard Holliday and Leland Hayward secured the rights, and they hired playwrights Howard Lindsay and Russell Crowe, who had won the Pulitzer Prize for State of the Union. They approached Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein too to compose one song for the musical, but the composers felt the two styles, traditional Austrian folk songs and their composition, would not work together. They offered to write a completely new score for the entire production if the producers were willing to wait while they completed work on Flower Drum Song, which is a fantastic movie. We love Flower Drum Song on this channel. The producers quickly responded that they would wait as long as necessary. The Sound of Music stage musical opened on November 16th, 1959, at the Lunt Fontaine Theater in New York City, and it ran on Broadway for 1,443 performances, winning 6 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. In June 1960, 20th Century Fox purchased the film adoption rights to the stage musical for $1.25 million, $13.3 million in 2024, against 10% of the gross. In December 1962, 20th Century Fox president Richard D. Zanuck hired Ernest Lehman to write the screenplay for the film adaptation of the stage musical. There's a picture of director and producer Robert Wise in 1990. Lehman reviewed the original script for the stage musical. Lehman rearranged the sequence of songs, and Lehman began transferring a work design for the stage into a film that could use the camera to emphasize action and mood and open the story up to the beautiful locations of Salzburg and the Austrian Alps. The do-re-mi sequence in the play, for example, was originally a stagnant number. Lehman transformed it into a lively montage showing some of the beautiful sights of Salzburg, as well as showing Maria and the children growing closer over time. Lehman also eliminated 2 songs, How Can Love Survive and No Way to Stop It, sung by the characters of Elsa and Max. In January 1963, he saw the Fox English dub version of the 2 German films. Not especially impressed, he decided to use the stage musical and Maria's memoir for most of the source material. While Lehman was developing the screenplay, he and Zanuck began looking for a director. Their first choice was Robert Wise, with whom Lehman had worked on the film adaptation of West Side Story, but Wise was busy preparing work for another film, The Sand Pebbles. Other directors were approached and turned down the offer, including Stanley Donen, Vincent J. Donahue, George Roy Hill, and Gene Kelly. In January 1963, Lehman invited one of his favorite directors, William Wyler, to travel to New York City with him to see the Broadway musical. After seeing the show, Wyler said he hated it, but after 2 weeks of Lehman's persuasion, Wyler reluctantly agreed to direct and produce the film. After hiring musical supervisor Roger Edams, Wyler, Lehman, and Edams traveled to Salzburg to scout filming locations. In 2 weeks, they managed to see approximately 75 locations, an experience that helped Lehman conceptualize several important sequences. During that trip, Lehman began to have reservation about Wyler's commitment to the project, and Lehman communicated this to Zanuck, who instructed the writer to finalize the first draft of the screenplay as quickly as possible. Lehman completed the first draft on September 10, 1963. Lehman sent it to Wyler, who had no suggestions or changes to add. At that time, Lehman also secretly gave a copy of the script to the agent of Robert Wise, whom Lehman still wanted as the director. Later that month, Wyler's agent approached Zanuck, asking that production on the film be delayed so Wyler could direct The Collector. Zanuck told him to tell Wyler to make the other film and that they would move ahead on schedule with another director, ending Wyler's participation. Meanwhile, Wise, whose film The Sand Pebbles had been postponed, read Lehman's first draft, was impressed what he read, and Wise agreed to direct the film. Joining the picture in October 1963, Wise flew to Salzburg with associate producer Saul Chaplin and members of his production team to scout filming locations, including many that Weiler had identified. When he returned, Wise began working on the script. Wise shared Lehman's version of the film, being centered on the music, and the changes he made were consistent with the writer's approach, mainly reducing the amount of sweetness and sentimentality found in the stage musical. He had reservation about Lehman's opening aerial sequence because West Side Story, whose screenplay Lehman had also written, had used a similar opening sequence, but it was unable to think of a better one and decided to keep Lehman's. Other changes include replacing an ordinary couple with a more romantic number and a new song for Maria's departure from the Abbey. Rogers provided something good, and I have confidence, especially for the film. I have confidence has to be the low point musically for the entire film. Lehman completed the second draft on December 20th, 1963, but additional changes could be made on input for Maria von Trapp and Christopher Plummer about the character of the captain. Plummer especially helped change a character lacking substance in a stronger, more forceful, complex figure with a wry sense of humor and a darker edge. Lehman completed his final draft on March 20th, 1964. And here we have a picture of Christopher Plummer and Julie Andrews on location in Salzburg, 1964. Lehman's first and only choice for Maria was Julie Andrews. When Weiss joined the project, he made a list of his choices for the role, which included Andrews as his first choice, Grace Kelly, and Shirley Jones. Weiss and Lehman went to Disney Studios to find footage from Mary Poppins, which was not yet released. So Julie Andrews plays two nannies. This one and Mary Poppins. A few minutes into the film, Weiss told him, "Let's go sign this girl before somebody else sees this film and grabs her." Andrews had some reservations, mainly about the amount of sweetness in the theatrical version. Mainly, but when she learned that her concerns were shared by Weiss and Lehman and what their vision was, she signed a contract with Fox to star in The Sound of Music and one other film for $225,000, which is $2.28 million in 2024. Weiss had a more difficult time casting the role of the captain. Many actors were considered for the part, including Bing Crosby, Yul Brynner, Sean Connery, and Richard Burton. Weiss had seen Christopher Plummer on Broadway. Weiss wanted him for the roles, but the stage actor turned down the offer several times. Weiss flew to London to meet with Plummer. Weiss explained his concept of the film. The actor accepted after being assured that he could work with Lehman to improve the character. Weiss also spent considerable time and effort on casting the secondary characters. For the role of Max Detweiler, Weiss initially considered Victor Bourget, Noel Coward, and Hal Holbrook, among others, before deciding on Richard Hayden. For the character of Baroness Elsa Schrader, Weiss looked for a name actress. Andrews and Plummer were not yet widely known to film audiences, and he decided on Eleanor Parker. The casting of the children's characters began in November 1963, and it involved over 200 interviews and auditions throughout the United States and England. Some of the child actors interviewed or tested who were not selected included Mia Farrow, Patty Duke, Leslie Ann Warren, Geraldine Chaplin, Shelley Fabares, Terry Garr, Kurt Russell, and the Osmonds. Most of the actors selected had some acting, singing, or dancing experience. Charmian Carr, however, was a model who worked part-time in a doctor's office, and she had no ambition to pursue a career as an actress. After a friend sent her photo to Wise's office, she was asked to interview. Wise later recalled, "She was so pretty and had such poise and charm that we liked her immediately." Mamie Nixon, who had dubbed a number of film actresses singing parts in film musicals, was cast as a character Sister Sophia rather than dubbing another voice. The last person to be cast was Daniel Trueheit in the role of Rolf. Rehearsals for the singing and dance sequences began on February 10, 1964. Then husband and wife team of Mark Bro and Dee Dee Wood, who had worked with Andrews on Mary Poppins, worked out the choreography with Sol Chapin on piano. The arrangements could not be altered under Rodgers and Hammerstein's contract. The stage choreography was not used because it was too restrictive. Bro and Wood worked out all new choreography better suited for the film that incorporated many of the Salzburg location and settings. They even choreographed the newly added puppet dance sequence for the Lonely Goat Herd. The choreography for the Landher strictly followed the traditional Austrian folk dance. The musical arranger, Erwin Kostal, who also had worked in the same role on Mary Poppins, pre-recorded the songs with the large orchestra and singers on a stage before the start of filming. In her book, The Sound of Music, The Making of America's Favorite Movie, Julie Antipol Hirsch says that Kostal used 7 children and 5 adults to record the children's voices. The only scene in which the child actors singing is heard is the release version of the film, is when they sing The Sound of Music on their own after Maria leaves. After Maria leaves, the child actors were dubbed into the film. And on the soundtrack, Charming Carr refuted the claim that the voices of the child actors were dubbed in the film and on the soundtrack. All right. Sorry about that. Michael Stallman is asking me if my son is going to serve the altar at 4 p.m. in Belmont. To which I responded, affirmative. Carr contended that all of its children who were in the film singing on the track, but 4 other children were added to most of the songs to give them a fuller sound. They did not replace them as singers. The voices of some of the adult actors had voice doubles, including those of Peggy Wood and Christopher Plummer. Schloss Liepelskron, where scenes were filmed representing the lakefront terrace and the gardens of the Von Trapp Villa. There's a picture of it on Wikipedia, and the guy who hosts a movie night at St. Dominic's every second Friday of the month, he's actually been there. Principal photography began on March 26, 1964, at 20th Century Fox Studios in Los Angeles, where scenes were filmed from Marla's bedroom and the Abbey Cloister and Graveyard. The company then flew to Salzburg, where filming reserved on April 23rd at Mondsee Abbey for the wedding scenes. From April 25th through May 22nd, scenes were filmed at the Felsenreitschule, Nonnberg Abbey, Mirabelle Palace Gardens, Resident Fountain, and various street locations through the Altstadt, Old Town area of the city. Weiss faced opposition from city leaders who did not want him staging scenes with swastika banners. They relented after he threatened instead to include old newsreel footage featuring the banners. Rainy days were a constant challenge for the company, so Weiss arranged for scenes to be shot at St. Margrethe Chapel and Dürer Studios, Reverend Mother's office. From May 23rd to June 7th, the company worked at Schloss Leopoldskron and an adjacent property called Bertelsmann for scenes representing the lakeside terrace and gardens of the Von Trapp Villa. From June 9th to 19th, scenes were shot at Fromberg Palace, which represented the back and front facades of the Villa. Carafe could not swim. Carafe was in danger during the capsizing boat scene. The Do Re Mi picnic scene in the mountains was filmed above the town of Werfen in the Salzach River Valley on June 25th and 27th. The opening sequence of Maria on Her Mountain was filmed from June 28th to July 2nd at Melwig Mountain near the town of Markschillerberg in Bavaria. During filming, birch trees were added and then removed. The brook that she walks through was plastic filled with water, which was put there during filming. The final scene of the Van Trapp family escaping over the mountains was filmed on the Obersalzberg in the Bavarian Alps. The Sound of Music gazebo at the Hellbrunn Palace in Salzburg was moved here from its original location at Schloss Liepelskron. And there's a picture of it on Wikipedia. The cast and crew flew back to Los Angeles, and they resumed filming at Fox Studios on July 6th for all remaining scenes, including those in the Villa dining room, ballroom, terrace, living room, and gazebo, following the last 2 scenes shot in the gazebo for the song Something Good and 16 Going on 17. Principal photography concluded on September 1st, 1964. A total of 83 scenes were filmed in just over 5 months. Post-production work began on August 25th with 3 weeks of dialogue dubbing to correct lines that were ruined by various street noises and rain. In October, Christopher Plummer's singing voice was dubbed by veteran Disney playback singer Bill Lee. Wise and film editor William Reynolds then edited the film. Irwin Kostal orchestrated the musical numbers, and he underscored the film with background music consisting of variations on Rodgers and Hammerstein's original songs to amplify or add nuances to the visual images. Wise arranged for 2 sneak preview showings in Minneapolis on Friday, January 15th, 1965. Oh, Karate Man is in the chat room. And of course, he's recommending B action movies now. Karate Man. Karate Man is into the lame stream. He used to watch The Sound of Music a lot as a kid. Doe, a deer, a female. My aunt used to have that record. Oh man. Wise arranged for 2 sneak preview showings in Minneapolis on Friday, January 15th, 1965, at the Mann Theater in Tulsa, Oklahoma the following night. Okay. Deadly Force and Safe Haven. Deadly Force. (1983) and Safe Haven. 1987. Oh, no Safe Haven. No Safe Haven. All right. Despite the sensational responses from the preview audiences, Wise made a few final editing changes before completing the film. According to the original print information for the film, the running time for the theatrical version was 174 minutes. The film was still in release when the Motion Picture Association film rating system was implemented in 1968, and it was given a G rating, general audiences, in 1969. Julie Andrews should have taken off her 90. The Sound of Music was filmed in Todd AO by Ted McCord and produced with deluxe color processing. Aerial footage was photographed with an MCS 70 camera. The sound was recorded on a 70 millimeter 6-track using a Westrex recording system. The sets used for the film were based on the storyboards of sketch artist Maurice Zuberano, who accompanied Wise to Austria to scout filming locations in November 1963. Wise met with the artist over 10 weeks and explained his objective for each scene, the feeling that he wanted to convey, and the visual images that he wanted to use. When Zuberano was finished, he provided Wise with a complete set of storyboards that illustrated each scene and set which the director used as guidance during filming. Zuberano's storyboards and location photos were also used by art director Boris Levin to design and construct all of the original interior sets at Fox Studios, as well as some external sets in Salzburg. The Von Trapp Villa was filmed in several locations. The front and back facades were filmed at Frohnberg Palace. The lakeside terrace and gardens was a set constructed on a property adjacent to Schloss Liepelskron called Bertelsmann, and the interior was constructed set at Fox Studios. The gazebo scenes for Something Good and 16 Going on 17 were filmed on a larger reconstructed set at Fox Studios, while some shots of the original gazebo were filmed on the grounds at Schloss Liepoldsskron in Salzburg. Most of the soundtrack to The Sound of Music was written by Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein II, and it was arranged and conducted by Erwin Kostal, who also adopted the instrumental underscore passages. Both the lyrics and music for 2 new songs were written by Rodgers, as Hammerstein died in 1960. The soundtrack album was released by RCA Victor in 1965 and is one of the most successful soundtrack albums in history, having sold over 20 million copies worldwide. The album reached the #1 position on the Billboard 200 that year in the United States. It remained in the top 10 for 109 weeks from May 1st, 1965 to July 16, 1967, and it remained on the Billboard 200 chart for 238 weeks. The album was the best-selling album in the UK in 1965, 1966, and 1968, and the second best-selling of the entire decade, spending a total of 70 weeks at #1 on the UK albums chart. It also stayed 73 weeks on the Norwegian charts, becoming the 7th best charting film of all time in that country. In 2015, Billboard named the album the second greatest album of all time. Behind what? AC/DC Back in Black? The album had been reissued several times, including anniversary editions with additional tracks in 1995, 2000, 2005, 2010, and 2015. The Sound of Music original soundtrack recording Super Deluxe Edition was released on December 1st, 2023, compiling all the previous release music as well as the complete instrumental score demo version songs with alternative scoring, i.e. solely instrumental, alternative Christopher Plummer vocals recorded prior to the removal for the final film, and interviews with Richard Rodgers, Robert Wise, and Charmian Carr. Wise hired Mike Kaplan to direct the publicity campaign for the film. After reading the script, Kaplan decided on the ad line, "The happiest sound in all the world," which would appear on promotional material and artwork. We saw it on the movie poster, which is very lame. Kaplan also bought in outside agencies to work with the studio's advertising department to develop the promotional artwork, eventually selecting a painting by Howard Tepning of Andrews on an alpine meadow with her carpet bag and guitar case in hand, with the children and Plummer in the background. In February 1964, Kaplan began placing ads in the trade papers Daily Weekly, Weekly Variety, and The Hollywood Reporter to attract future exhibitor interest in the project. The studio intended the film to have an initial roadshow theatrical release in select large cities in theaters that could accommodate the 70-millimeter screenings and 6-track stereophonic sound. The roadshow concept involved 2 showings a day, with reserved seating and an intermission similar to Broadway musicals or Gone with the Wind. Kaplan identified 4 key cities that would likely be included in the roadshow release, and Kaplan developed a promotional strategy targeting the major newspapers of those cities. During the Salzburg production phase, 20th Century Fox organized press junkets for U.S. journalists to interview Wise and his team and the cast members. The film had its opening premiere on March 2nd, 1965, at the Rivoli Theater in New York City. Initial reviews were mixed. Big surprise there. Bosley Crowther in the New York Times criticized the film's romantic nonsense and sentiment and children's artificial roles and Robert Wise's cozy come corny direction. No kidding. I didn't even laugh at any of this stuff. This is just a lame TV kids movie. Judith Christ, in a biting review in the New York Herald Tribune, dismissed the film as icky sticky and designed for the 5 to 7 set and their mommies. Yeah, no kidding. In a review for McCall's magazine, Pauline Kael called the film the sugar-coated lie people seem to want to eat, and that audiences have turned into emotional and aesthetic imbeciles when we hear ourselves humming the sickly goody-goody songs. Doe, a deer, a female deer, Ray, a pocket full of sun. Wise later, me, a name I call myself, far a long, long way to run. Wise later recalled the East Coast intellectual papers and magazines destroyed us, but the local papers and the trades gave us great reviews. Indeed, reviewers such as Philip K. Schuer of the LA Times described the film as 3 hours of visual and vocal brilliance. I find that hard to believe. And Variety called it a warmly pulsating, captivating drama set in the most imaginative use of the lilting of R.H. tunes, magnificently mounted and with a brilliant cast. The wildly mixed film reviews reflected the critical response to the stage musical, according to the Oxford Companion to the American Musical. After its Los Angeles premiere on May 10th, The Sound of Music opened in 131 theaters in the United States, including a limited number of roadshow events. After 4 weeks, it became the number one box office film in the country, and it held that position for 30 of the next 43 weeks in 1965. The original theatrical release of the film in the United States lasted 4.5 years. A few months after its U.S. release, The Sound of Music opened in 261 theaters in other countries, the first U.S. film to be completely dubbed in a foreign language, both dialogue and music. The German, French, Italian, and Spanish versions were completely dubbed. The Japanese version had Japanese dialogue with English songs, and other versions were released with foreign subtitles. The film was a popular success in every country it opened in, except 2 countries where the story originated, Austria and West Germany. In these 2 countries, the film had to compete with the much-loved Die Trap Family in 1956, which provided the original inspiration for the Broadway musical, and its sequel, Die Trap Family in America, 1958. Both films are still widely popular in German-speaking Europe and considered the authoritative Von Trapp story, not the milk and toast Hollywood version. Austrians took exception to the liberties taken by the filmmakers with regard to the costumes, which did not reflect the traditional style and the replacement of traditional Austrian folk songs with Broadway show tunes. That's what's the problem with this. That is exactly what's the problem with this. The film's Nazi theme was especially unpopular in West Germany, where the Munich branch manager for 20th Century Fox approved the unauthorized cutting of the entire third act of the film following the wedding sequence. The scenes showing Salzburg following the Anschluss. Robert Weiss and the studio intervened. The original film was restored, and the branch manager was fired. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, The Sound of Music holds an approval rating of a whopping 83% based on 77 reviews, with an average rating of a whopping 8.1 out of 10. The website's critics' consensus reads, unapologetically sweet and maybe even a little corny. The Sound of Music, a little corny. The Sound of Music will win over all but the most cynical film goers with its classic songs and irresistible warmth. I guess I'm the one who's the most cynical film goer here. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 63 out of 100 based on 11 critics, including generally favorable reviews. The Sound of Music is one of the most commercially successful films of all time. 4 weeks after its theatrical release, it became the #1 box office film in the U.S. from revenue generated by 25 theaters, each screening only 10 roadshow performances per week. It held the #1 position for 30 of the next 43 weeks, and it ended up the highest grossing film of 1965. One contributing factor in the film's early commercial success was the repeat business of many film goers. In some cities in the United States, the number of tickets sold exceeded the total population. By January 1966, the film had earned $20 million in distributor rentals from just 140 roadshow engagements in the US and Canada. Worldwide, The Sound of Music broke previous box office records in 29 countries, including the UK, where it played for a record-breaking 3 years at the Dominion Theatre in London, and it earned £4 million in rentals, and it grossed £6 million, more than twice as much as any other film had taken in. It was also a major success in the Netherlands, Hong Kong, and Tokyo, where it played for as long as 2 years at some theaters. It was not a universal success. However, with the film only enjoying modest success in France, and it was a flop in West Germany, it also initially performed poorly in Italy, but a re-release after the Oscars brought better results. It was #1 at the U.S. box office for a further 11 weeks in 1966, for a total of 41 weeks at #1. By November 1966, The Sound of Music had become the highest-grossing film of all time, with over $67.5 million in worldwide rentals, $125 million in gross receipts, surpassing Gone with the Wind, which held that distinction for 24 years. It was set at the top 10 at the U.S. box office in its 100th week of release. Sound of Music completed its initial 4.5-year theatrical release run in the United States on Labor Day 1969, the longest initial run for a film in the U.S., having earned $68,313,000 in rentals. In the U.S. and Canada, it played for 142 weeks at the Eglinton Eglinton Theatre in Toronto. It was the first film to gross over $100 million. By December 1970, it had earned $121.5 million in worldwide rentals, which was over four times higher than the film's estimated break-even point of $29.5 million in rentals. The film was re-released in 1973 and increased its North American rentals to $78.4 million. By the end of the 1970s, it was ranked seventh in all-time North. It was ranked seven in all-time North American rentals, having earned $79 million. The film's re-release in 1990 increased the total net North American admissions to 142,415,400, the third highest number of tickets sold behind Gone with the Wind and Star Wars, and about 283.3 million admissions. Worldwide, The Sound of Music eventually earned a total domestic gross of $163,214,076 and a total gross worldwide gross of $286,214,076 adjusted for inflation. The film earned about $2.366 billion at 2014 prices, placing it as among the top 10 highest grossing films of all time. Best Picture, Robert Wise won. We're talking Academy Awards Best Picture. Robert Wise won. Best Director, Robert Wise won. Best Actress, Julie Andrews nominated. Best Supporting Actress, Peggy Wood nominated. Best Art Direction, Color, Art Direction, Boris Levin. Set Direction, Walter M. Scott. And Ruby R. Levitt are the nominations for Art Direction and Set Direction. They are nominated at the Academy Awards. Best Cinematography, Color, Ted D. McCord was nominated. Best Costume Design, Color, Dorothy Jenkins was nominated. Best Film Editing, William H. Reynolds won. Best Scoring and Music, Adoption or Treatment, Irwin Koskell won. Best Sound, James Corcoran and Fred Hines won. So this movie won 5 Academy Awards from 1965. American Cinema Editors Awards, Best Edited Feature Film, William H. Reynolds won. British Academy Film Awards, Best British Actress, Julie Andrews nominated. Donald D. Doratello Awards, Best Foreign Actress, Julie Andrews won. Directors Guild of America Awards, Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Motion Pictures, Robert Wise won. Golden Globe Awards, Best Motion Pictures, Musical or Comedy, The Sound of Music won. Best Actress in a Motion Picture, Music or Comedy, Musical or Comedy is Julie Andrews won. Julie Andrews. Golden Globe Awards, Best Supporting Actress, Motion Picture, Peggy Wood nominated. Best Director, Motion Picture, Robert Wise nominated. Laurel Awards top general entertainment. Laurel Awards top female music performance 1. National Board of Review Awards top 10 films 1. National Film Preservation Board, National Film Registry, The Sound of Music inducted. New York Film Critics Critic Awards, Best Actress Julie Andrews, second place, and Writers Guild of America Awards, Best Written U.S. Musical, Ernest Lehman won. The Sound of Music has been included in numerous top film lists from the American Film Institute, AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies, number 55. AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies, 10th Anniversary Edition, number 40. AFI's 100 Years, 100 Cheers, number 41. AFI's 100 Years of Music. AFI's 100 Years of Musicals, number 4. AFI's 100 Years, 100 Passions, number 27. AFI's 100 Years, 100 Songs, The Sound of Music, number 10. My Favorite Things, number 64. And Do Re Mi, number 88. The first U.S. television broadcast of The Sound of Music was on February 29th, 1976 on ABC, which paid $15 million or $87.7 million in 2024 for a one-time only broadcast that became one of the 20 highest rated films shown on television to that point, with a Nielsen rating of 33.6 and an audience share of 49%. The film was not shown again until ABC acquired the broadcast rights in June 1977 for $21.5 million for 20 showings over 22 years. The first NBC broadcast of the film was on February 11, 1979. NBC continued to broadcast the film annually for 20 years. During most of its run on NBC, the film was heavily edited to fit a 3-hour time slot, approximately 140 minutes without commercials, which inevitably cut around 30 minutes out of the original film. On April 9th, 1995, Julie Andrews hosted a 4-hour NBC special broadcast of The Sound of Music uncut, minus the entr'acte, with the musical numbers shown in a letterbox format. The availability of the film on home video led to a decline of its television ratings. As a result, NBC let their contract to show the film lapse in 2001. That year, on November 30th, The Sound of Music was broadcast one time on the Fox network in the heavily edited 140-minute version. Since 2002, the film has aired on ABC on a Sunday before Christmas and has been broadcast on its sister cable network, Freeform, periodically around Easter and other holidays. Most of its more recent showings have been December 28, 2008. On December 22nd, 2013, the annual broadcast had its highest rating since 2007. The increase in ratings was credited to NBC's broadcast of The Sound of Music Live, a live television adaptation of the original musical, which aired earlier that month. The December 17, 2023 broadcast marked the first time ABC aired the entire film in its original Todd AO aspect ratio, using the 2010 4K restoration as the basis. During the film's run at ABC, the film been presented as part of has the film been presented as part of the wonderful world of Disney's programming block. In the UK, the BBC acquired the film rights, paying a corporation record $4.1 million. The Sound of Music was first broadcast on BBC One on December 25th, 1978. And as of December 2016, 15 times since, mostly around Christmas time. As the BBC channels in Britain are not funded by advertising, there was no need to cut scenes to fit within a time slot, and the film was screened in the full 174-minute version without breaks. The film has been identified as part of BBC's programming in the event of an outbreak of nuclear war. The Sound of Music has been issued on VHS, Laserdisc, and DVD numerous times. The first DVD version was released on August 29, 2000. To commemorate the 35th anniversary of the film's release, the film is often included in box sets with other Rodgers and Hammerstein's film adaptations. On 50th anniversary DVD with the making of documentaries and special features was released on November 15, 2005. The film made its debut issue on Blu-ray disc on November 2nd, 2010 for its 45th anniversary. For the Blu-ray release, the original 70mm negatives were rescanned at 8K resolution, then restored and remastered at 4K resolution for the transfer to Blu-ray, giving the most detailed copy of the film seen thus far. On March 10, 2015, 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment released the Sound of Music 50th Anniversary Ultimate Collector's Edition, a 5-disc set featuring 13 hours of bonus features, including a new documentary, The Sound of a City. Julie Andrews returns to Salzburg. Bonus 2015 episode of ABC's 2020 entitled The Untold Story of the Sound of Music featured a preview of the documentary and interviews by Diane Sawyer. Following the acquisition of 21st Century Fox by Disney, The Sound of Music was made available on Disney Plus streaming service upon its debut on November 12, 2019, then on Hulu on December 18, 2023. The film is set to be released on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray in late 2025 to commemorate the film's 60th anniversary, following a 9-month restoration effort conducted by the film restoration team at the Walt Disney Studios in collaboration with 20th Century Studios in Concord to release a new 4K remaster that brings the film closer to its original theatrical look and sound. This will be preceded by a worldwide theatrical release of the new remaster, with Fathom Evans releasing it in the U.S. through its Big Screen Classic series on September 13th, 14th, and 17th, 2025, alongside special events for the film's fan base. The Sound of Music film adaptation, like the stage musical, presents a fictionalized story inspired by the history of the Von Trapp family. And there you have Maria and George Ludwig von Trapp photographs on Wikipedia. The musical was based on the West German film The Trapp Family, 1956, rather than Maria von Trapp's 1949 memoirs as directed. Vincent J. Donahue had not seen the film, or had seen the film, and Donahue decided that would make a good vehicle for Mary Martin. The musical followed the film's plot so closely that the New York Times review of the West German film noticed that it strongly suggests the sound of music, often scene by scene. The West German screenwriters made several significant changes to the family story that were kept in the musical. Maria had been hired to teach just one child, but the 1956 film made her governess to all 7 children. The 1965 film adaptation was influenced by other musicals of its era, such as Mary Poppins, the Rodgers and Hammerstein television production of Cinderella, and the stage production of Lerner and Loew's Camelot, coincidentally all starring Julie Andrews. At this time, Julie Andrews was at the top of her game. She has that little bun hairdo, the redhead, and the pale skin, and the blue eyes. She's got it going. Screenwriter Ernest Lehman was inspired by the opening of West Side Story, and Lehman saw the musical as a fairy tale that's almost real. The film incorporated many fairy tale tropes, which included the idyllic imagery in the hills of Salzburg, European villas, and the cross-class Cinderella-like romance between Maria and Captain von Trapp. As Maria walks down the aisle to be married, the pageantry is explicitly both Guinevere and Cinderella. In keeping with this tone, the filmmakers used artistic license to convey the essence and meaning of their story. George Ludwig von Trapp was indeed an anti-Nazi opposed to the Anschluss, and he lived with his family in a villa in the district of Salzburg called Eigen. The film, however, greatly exaggerated their standard of living. The actual family villa located at Tronstrab 34 Eigen 5026 was large and comfortable, but not nearly as grand as the mansion depicted in the film. The house was also not their ancestral home as depicted in the film. The family had previously lived in homes in Zell am See and Klostermenburg after being forced to abandon their actual ancestral home in Pula following World War I. George moved the family to the Salzburg via shortly after the death of his wife, Agatha Whitehead, in 1922. George is referred to as captain in the film, but he held a noble title, Ritter, hereditary knight, which had higher social status than a naval officer. Austrian nobility was legally abolished in 1919, and the title von was prescribed. However, both continued to be widely used unofficially as a matter of social courtesy. George was offered a position in the German Kriegsmarine. Nazi Germany was Nazi Germany was looking to expand its fleet of U-boats. Korvette Captain Lieutenant Commander von Trapp was the most successful Austro-Hungarian submarine commander of World War I, having sunk 11 Allied merchant ships totaling 47,000 1,653 GRT and 2 Allied warships, displacing a total of 12,641 tons. With his family in desperate financial straits, he seriously considered the offer before deciding he could not serve a Nazi regime. George is depicted in the film as humorless, emotionally distant father. In reality, their child, Maria Francisca von Trapp, called Louisa in the film, described her father as a doting parent who made handmade gifts for the children in his woodshop and who would often lead family musicals on his violin. She had a different recollection of her stepmother, Maria Augusta Kuchera, whom she described as moody and prone to outbursts of rage. In a 2003 interview, Maria remembered that she had a terrible temper, and from one moment to the next, you didn't know what hit her. We were not used to this, but we took it like a thunderstorm that would pass because the next minute she could be very nice. Maria Kuchera had indeed been a novice of Nonnberg Abbey in Salzburg and had been hired by the von Trapp family. However, she was hired only to be a tutor to young Maria Francisca, who had contracted scarlet fever and needed her lessons at home. She was not hired to be governess to all the children. Maria and George married for practical reasons rather than love and affection for each other. George needed a mother for his children, and Maria needed the security of a husband and family once she decided to leave the abbey. I really and truly was not in love, Maria wrote in her memoir. I liked him, but I didn't love him. However, I loved the children. So in a way, I really married the children. I learned to love him more than I have ever loved before or after. They were married in 1927, not in 1938, as depicted in the film. They had been married for over a decade by the time of the Anschluss and had 2 of their 3 children together by that time. Maria and George enjoyed a happy marriage. The von Trapp family lost most of its wealth during the worldwide depression of the early 1930s when the Austrian National Bank folded. In order to survive, the family dismissed the servants and it began taking in boarders. They also staged singing on stage to earn money, a fact that caused the proud George much embarrassment. In the film, the von Trapp family hike over the Alps from Austria to Switzerland to escape the Nazis, which would not have been possible. Salzburg is over 200 miles from Switzerland. The von Trapp villa, however, was only a few kilometers from the Austria-Germany border, and the final scene shows the family hiking on the Obersalzberg near the German town of Berchtesgaden, within sight of Adolf Hitler's Kelstein House Eagle's Nest retreat. In reality, the family simply walked to the local train station and boarded a train to Italy, from which they traveled to Switzerland, France, and London. The Trapps were entitled to Italian citizenship since George had been born in Zadar, Dalmatia, Austria-Hungary, which had been annexed by Italy after World War I. From London, they emigrated to the United States on their Italian passports. Like in the musical, Max Detweiler acted as a family scheming music director in the film. He is based on the Reverend Father Franz Wasner, a secular clergyman who was their musical director for over 20 years while also serving as the family chaplain and accompanying them when they left Australia. The character of Friedrich, the second oldest child in the first version, was based on Rupert, the oldest child of the real Von Trapp children. Liesel, the oldest child in the film, was based on Agatha von Trapp, the second oldest in the real family. The names and ages of the children were changed in part because the third child was also named Maria. So the producers changed her name to Louisa because they thought that it would be confusing to have two characters called Maria in the film. The Von Trapp family had no control over how they were depicted in the film, and Stage Musical, having given up the rights to their story and to the German producer in the 1950s, who then sold them to U.S. producers. Robert Weiss met with Maria von Trapp and made it clear, according to the memo to Richard Zanuck, that he was not making a documentary or a realistic movie about her family, and that he would make the film with complete dramatic freedom in order to produce a fine and moving film, one they could all be proud of. The Sound of Music is set in Salzburg, yet it was largely ignored in Austria upon release. The film adoption was a blockbuster worldwide, but it ran only 3 days in Salzburg movie theaters, with locals showing disdain for a film that wasn't authentic. The Austrian people get it. They get how lame this movie is. In 1966, American Express created the first Sound of Music guided tour in Salzburg. That's the one that the leader of the St. Dominic movie night every second Friday has been to. Since 1972, Panorama Tours has been the leading Sound of Music bus tour company in that city, taking approximately 50,000 tourists a year to various film locations in Salzburg and the surrounding region. The Salzburg tourism industry took advantage of the attention from foreign tourists, although residents of the city were apathetic about everything that is dubious about tourism. The guides on the bus tour seemed to have little idea of what really happened on the set. Even the ticket agent for the Sound of Music dinner show tried to dissuade Austrians from attending a performance that was intended for U.S. tourists, saying it does not have anything to do with the real Austria. By 2007, the Sound of Music was drawing 300,000 visitors a year to Salzburg, more than the city's self-conception as the birthplace of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. A German translation of the musical was performed on the national stage for the first time in 2005 at the Vienna Volksoper, receiving negative reviews from Austrian critics who called it boring and referred to Edelweiss as an insult to Austrian musical creation. The musical family premiered in Salzburg in 2011 at the Salzburger Landestheater, but Maria was played in the Salzburg premiere by a Dutch actress who grew up with the songs. However, most performances in Vienna and Salzburg were sold out, and the musical is now in both companies' repertoire. A sing-along Sound of Music revival screening was first shown at the London Lesbian and Gay Film Festival in 1999. leading to a successful run at the Prince Charles Cinema, which was ongoing as of 2018. During the screenings, audience members are often dressed as nuns and Von Trapp's children and are encouraged to sing along to lyrics superimposed by the screen. In July 2000, Sing Along Sound of Music shows opened in Boston, Massachusetts, and Austin, Texas. Some audience members dressed up as cast members and interacted with action shown on the screen. The film began a successful run at the Ziegfeld Theater in New York City in September 2000, with the opening attended by cast members Charmin Carr Lysel, Daniel Truhitt, Rolf, and Kim Karath Gretel. Sing-along Sound of Music screenings have since become an international phenomenon. In 2001, the U.S. Library of Congress selected the film for preservation in the National Film Registry, finding it historically, culturally, or aesthetically significant. The Academy Film Archive preserved the Sound of Music in 2003. All right, let's go to the IMDb section. Shall we? The Sound of Music, 1965, rated G, 2 hours and 52 minutes. Way too long. It's a whopping 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb. 276,000 ratings. Its popularity is 670, down 534. But still pretty high, 670. A young novice is sent by her convent in 1930s Austria to become a governess to the 7 children of a widowed naval officer. And I'm having a tough time scrolling down on this thing. My page just froze. I'm dozing off here. I'm at an hour, 33 minutes on this stupid thing. Oh, here we go. I hate this movie. More like this, The Wizard of Oz, Mary Poppins, The Incredibles, and Hatchie, A Dog's Tale. Christopher Plummer accidentally said the word captain to Julie Andrews during the argument scene. Despite the error, producer and director Robert Wise thought it was that amusing and he liked it so much he kept it in the movie. George von Trapp was an officer in the Austro-Hungarian Imperial Navy in World War I, commanding ships based from ports on the Adriatic coast of Croatia, an imperial province. In 1918, the empire was dissolved, leaving Austria a landlocked country and von Trapp out of a job in the process. Austrian Navy sounds like an oxymoron to viewers unaware of this historical context. Maria says when the Lord closes the door, someone he opens the window? Oh, somewhere he opens the window. guess I can relate to that. I don't know. The 20th Century Fox logo is placed in complete silence. The 1996 video fits the movie onto one VHS cassette by removing the intermission screen as well as the Interact. Featured in film review Julie Anders, 1967. Soundtracks Prelude, 1959. Music by Richard Rodgers. As played during the opening aerial shots. Here's a review on IMDb. Very flattering review compared to mine. I'm giving this one a 2 out of 10. D. Weck on IMDb wrote a review dated December 7th, 1998. And the title of the review was in my personal top 10 of all time. Has Julie Andrews ever appeared on a film more beautifully than in this film? I doubt it. Has she ever sung with such richness and gusto as is captured here? I thought it was boredom, not richness and gusto. As a big fan of hers, I can watch this musical over and over again and just sigh. You want to marry her? What? Okay. Wise and his cinematographer have photographed Andrews in a manner that no other director, even her husband. Watch the scene where Maria watches the captain sing Edelweiss with the kids. Weiss turns her into a gauzy angel. It is a fantastic moment among hundreds that this movie contains. As a big fan of hers, I can what's this say? As a big fan of hers, I can watch this musical over and over again. Just sigh. Okay, I am firmly in the camp that says Julie Andrews was completely, utterly, and regrettably robbed when the 1965 Oscars were handed out. She embodied Maria von Trapp wholly and with every fiber of her being. Just watch the scene in which she races the boys in a segment of Do Re Mi. She runs at the camera with her utter abandon here, no holding back, or considering the shot at the end of the song where she places her hand atop her head. It's as if even she can't believe she's hitting that note. It would have been on her husband's head, right? The Julie Christie performance that beat Andrews is now all but forgotten. The Sound of Music, however, lives on and on. The Sound of Music is a bit bittersweet for me, given that audiences' tastes would soon turn away from big budget musicals in general, and Julie Andrews specifically. But what a legacy it and she had left. Had left. What a legacy it and she have left. Release date April 1st, 1965. Country of origin United States. Official sites. There's a website and an official site. Links to those on IMDb. Languages English and German, also known as La Novicia Nobelde. Filming locations Felsens Reitschule, Salzburg, Austria, for the music festival scenes. Robert Weiss Productions and Argyle Enterprises are the production companies. All right. Budget $8,200,000 estimated. Opening weekend US and Canada 413,497. September 9th, 2018. Gross US and Canada 159,287,539. Gross worldwide 159,500,547. Runtime 2 hours 52 minutes. It was in color, and the aspect ratio was 2. Aspect ratio 2.20 to 1. All right. So I'm having trouble keeping my eyes open. As you have noticed, it's almost midnight here, and I got to wake up tomorrow morning to get my allergy appointment and some maintenance on my car. So I'm going to try to get through Pagan Island tomorrow, and then I'll put up another review for you around dinner time, laters.